Let's continue to see what a retirement plan should look like. Part 3, a year-by-year cash flow plan. We're continuing to look at David and Karen's retirement dream and their story of how they transitioned into and through retirement. They had a dream. Number 1, David insisted that the money he had collected must be used to protect Karen if he passed away early. Number 2, they wanted to spend quality time with family. Number 3, they wanted to take their RV to 49 states and then rent one in Hawaii. Number 4, they wanted to volunteer at their church, fund their hobbies of quilting and hiking, and then finally, leave a legacy to their kids if they had any money left over. There are a few goals to a good cash flow plan. The number 1 goal is to project what the future looks like with our present expenses, cash flow, and asset performance. Once we have this, we can then make intelligent adjustments to the way we spend and invest. Here we have a retirement mantra. Your retirement dreams depend on your cash flow. If you don't have a cash flow, you don't have a retirement. That means the first thing we need to do for an intelligent retirement plan is to solve for cash flow. Here's the process. Number 1, we look at guaranteed income. The first of these is Social Security, then pension or paying annuities. Then we look for other kinds of income that will continue in retirement. A good example of this is rental properties. As we fill in the data for the Andersons, we see it looks something like this at the beginning of retirement. Right when they retire, they have elected to defer their money for several years, so they will actually receive nothing from Social Security right away. This will allow them to earn deferred credits for later on. David has a $900 pension plan. They have no paying annuities and no rental properties. Next in the process, we look at the expenses. For example, the monthly budget, and then other expenses that will come along during their retirement years. For example, remodeling a kitchen, buying a new car, or funding the hobbies. If we plug in the Andersons data, it looks like this. They figure they have a $6,000 a month budget. They plan to remodel the kitchen, which will cost about $30,000. They expect to buy a new car, and they want to pay about $35,000 for that. Every year, they expect to spend around $6,000 for their RV hobbies. Next, we look at the assets that a couple would have. Does the couple have anything in checking or savings? Do they have a Roth mutual fund, or an IRA mutual fund, or a 401k? As we plug in the Andersons data, it looks like this. They have $45,000 in checking and savings, a Roth mutual fund of $300,000, and an IRA mutual fund of $450,000. They do not have a 401k. A retirement plan needs to make some assumptions. For example, what will inflation be like? Also, what kind of return can we expect for our money? As we develop a plan, we like to make conservative assumptions. For example, we assume a 3% inflation rate. We also like to plan a very low rate of return on invested assets. At this point, we're saying 4%. Generally, the stock market will provide quite a bit more than that, but we want to plan with low assumptions and then assume we're looking at a worst case scenario. Anything the stock market provides beyond that is a bonus. We're also going to make an assumption about the stock market and taxes. For the simplicity of planning, we're going to assume that they remain stable. Now that we've collected the necessary data, we can see the actual cash flow plan. You will notice the first years of David and Karen's retirement appears pretty painful. They have a serious negative monthly cash flow of over $5,000, which is being drawn from their invested assets. From 2015 to 2022, we see their invested assets diminish from $750,000 to just over $500,000. At first glance, this might appear that this couple is not ready for retirement, but you might recall that our optimum strategy for claiming Social Security, which we covered in a previous video, called for us to defer Social Security for several years. Once David and Karen both begin drawing their full Social Security benefits in 2023, which have now been augmented with delayed credits, they begin to see a strong positive cash flow for the rest of their lives. It is also important to note that David and Karen have still been able to live their dreams during these years. After 2023, we begin to see their invested assets grow again. If we look at the cash flow plan for later in the Andersons' life, we see that their Social Security strategy ought to serve them well. Even if they manage to live into their hundreds, they will still maintain a positive cash flow, which will allow their invested assets to grow well beyond their initial retirement value. Please remember, we're still assuming only a 4% return on these investments. Here's the end result. David and Karen are in a good position. With as little as a 4% interest rate on their assets, they will have enough income to protect both their dreams and themselves during retirement. This means that they have a few tasks. 1. We need to now diversify their assets across their timeline, which is a bit more complicated than it sounds, but completely doable. 2. We need to ensure the safety of their assets with at least a 4% growth rate. From a historic perspective, this should be quite doable, although of course, past performance is no guarantee of future results. Finally, we may need to actually encourage them to dream a little bit bigger. Their financial situation would support a few more goals. We welcome you to click the link and use our budget calculator as the first step of developing a year-by-year cash flow plan. Also, stay tuned to learn about diversifying across your time horizon.